Nvidia's RTX 5090 laptop GPU is kind of a joke compared to last gen's 4090. At least, that's what the 25 games I tested at 3 resolutions told me. But it's not all bad. There's at least one thing the 5090 does very well: emptying your wallet. Okay, but seriously, the 5090 does have one real strength, and depending on how you game, it could be a big deal. Based on the spec sheets, the newer laptop 5090 has 8% more CUDA cores, 50% more VRAM capacity with 55% more memory bandwidth as its newer GDDR7, and a slightly higher maximum boost clock. But both GPUs have the same 256-bit memory bus and max out with 175 watts of power. More power equals more performance. This graph shows the 3D Mark TimeSpy graphics score from each GPU at different power levels. But with both running at 95 watts, the 5090 was scoring 18% higher than the 4090 in this best case synthetic test. But if we compare both maxed out at 175 watts, the 5090's lead lowers to 11% better than the 4090. Laptops with these specs are not cheap, but if we find any good sales, we'll add them to the gaminglaptop.deals website. You can save money with the link below. Now, I'm using XMG's Neo 16s to do this testing, both on air cooling rather than using the liquid coolers. But the 5090 laptop is paired with a newer CPU and faster RAM. Unfortunately, that's just a real-world difference. Newer RTX 50 series GPUs are usually paired with newer hardware. But don't worry, the newer CPU and RAM aren't enough to save the 5090. The Cinebench results show us that there's not really that much of a CPU performance difference. Single core was much the same. Both laptops have 99 watt-hour batteries, but despite other component differences inside the laptops, the 5090 lasted 79% longer than the 4090 when running the same game on battery power. A massive difference. The 5090 laptop used less power when measuring both at the wall with the charger connected. In 3 maxed out games at 4K, the older 4090 used about 24% more power. Combined with the battery life difference, it's clear the 5090 is more power efficient. This means the 5090 is better in terms of performance per watt, which is how many frames in a game it can deliver per watt of power consumed. But this improved power efficiency is the only real win I've found for the 5090 so far. The 4090 ran slightly warmer, but the 2025 Neo 16 with the 5090 has an upgraded cooler, so it's not a fair temperature comparison. Regardless, neither laptop showed thermal throttling, so performance testing remains valid as temperatures are under control. The 4090 hit higher clock speeds, though it was also drawing more power. Both GPUs are rated for up to 175 watts, but in practice, the 5090 consistently hit a lower power cap before reaching that limit. The clearest example of this was in Red Dead Redemption 2, where the 5090 had its most embarrassing result out of all 25 games tested. I know, it's an older game, but just look at how much worse the 5090 performs here. I did not expect this. The reason becomes clear when we dig into the power usage. For some reason, the 5090 was only drawing around 150 watts, while the older 4090 was cruising along at 170 plus. Yes, the 5090 is the newer GPU, but more power generally means more performance. And this explains why the 4090 hits higher FPS in this game. Although this is an extreme outlier, it's an example of the 5090 using less power than the 4090 for unknown reasons. I'm not sure if this is a driver issue that will get patched or just how it behaves, but other reviewers like Just Josh and GizmoSlipTech have also confirmed they see lower than expected power draw in games. I had some serious doubts after seeing that result. I figured either I made a huge mistake somewhere, or the 5090 isn't performing right and my data isn't valid. Well, I retested both laptops more than 5 times, confirming the same settings we used each time. I re-downloaded the game files fresh, reinstalled the drivers. I tried everything I could think of, but no changes. So I grabbed MSI's Titan 18 with RTX 5090 graphics and ran the test again, but it almost performed the same as the 5090 in the Neo 16. So I'm not sure if this particular game needs a new driver update or something, but you'd think it should be fine given it's over 5 years old at this point. In fact, the results from so many of the games that I tested on both of these laptops looked so sus that I ended up retesting all 25 of them at all 3 resolutions on the MSI Titan just as a sanity check, to make sure that the Titan's 5090 was performing about the same as the Neo's 5090, and the differences were minimal and within the margin of error range. So I'm pretty sure that the rest of the game results you're about to see in this video are just how the 5090 currently performs. It's not all bad for the 5090. In Cyberpunk 2077, it was reaching a 20% higher average FPS at 4K when compared to the 4090. But that's the biggest improvement seen out of all 25 games tested. There's still an 11% lead with the 5090 at 1440p, while 1080p has basically no difference, as the GPU difference generally matters less at lower resolutions like this. What I found more interesting was that the 5090 was behind in the same game, but with ray tracing and upscaling enabled. I thought that's gotta be wrong, so I tested the game again on both laptops, but got the same results. That's not the only weird one though. Hogwarts Legacy was worse on the 5090 at 4K and 1080p. And again, I retested this game on both laptops, but still got these same results. But in other games like Space Marine 2, the 5090 was 11% faster at 1440p and 19% faster at 4K, though it actually performed worse at 1080p. Although that's weird, it's less of a concern since no one's buying this level of hardware for 1080p gaming. The Last of Us Part 2 also ran better on the 5090, which sounds like a stupid thing to point out, since you'd expect the newer GPU to always win, but based on my testing, that's not guaranteed. In fact, in most games, the difference was so minor, it really doesn't matter one way or the other which GPU you go with. A lot of the time, I doubt you'd be able to tell the difference in a blind test. I spent days testing 25 games at 3 resolutions on both laptops, with and without ray tracing, because more data equals more better when trying to come to a fair conclusion. But at the end of all that, most of the games had such small differences that I'm not even going to bother talking through any more of the individual game graphs. Just pause the video if you want a longer look at any of the specific games that I've tested. But for the most part, it's not looking good for the RTX 5090 laptop GPU, at least when we're not factoring in frame generation. But I'll talk about that more soon. For now, let's step back and take a look at the average differences between these two GPUs. On average, over all 25 games tested, at 1080p, the RTX 5090 was actually slightly slower when compared to the older RTX 4090. Granted, that's in part due to the Red Dead Redemption 2 outlier. But even if we remove that, the 5090 is only 0.5% faster when averaging the other 24 games. But 1080p isn't exactly a GPU-heavy resolution, so let's move on. At 1440p, the 5090 was now just 0.6% faster than the 4090 in my 25 game test, or a whopping 1.3% faster if you want to remove Red Dead Redemption 2 as an outlier. So still not great. But what if we shift even more load to the GPU with a higher resolution? Surely that's where the 5090 will truly shine. At 4K, the RTX 5090 laptop GPU was only 3% faster compared to the 4090. Only 3 out of the 25 games tested had a 10% or more FPS boost with the 5090. Given the small difference, I don't think we're at the point yet where the 5090's 24 gigs of VRAM are able to help. The 16 gigs available to the 4090 appears to be enough, at least in 2025. Here's how things look if we average the FPS from all 25 games together. This makes it really easy to see just how small and insignificant the performance difference is. I really expected more. This is a pathetic improvement after more than 2 years between the release of these GPUs. Or is it? What about frame generation? That's one of Nvidia's major selling points for the RTX 50 series. And look, I think frame generation is a good feature when used correctly. And according to this big investigation by Tim from Hardware Unboxed, that means single-player games that aren't latency sensitive, with a base frame rate of 70 to 80 FPS prior to generating frames. Most of the games that I play fall into that bucket, and I do play my games with frame generation on and enjoy the smoother experience. But at the end of the day, it's not fair to compare AI-generated frames against rasterized frames and pretend that it's an FPS boost. The visual quality and latency aren't the same. It's just not an apples-to-apples comparison. Not to mention, both of these laptops can run pretty much any game at 4K good settings with just DLSS upscaling. So I wouldn't say frame generation is a must-have anyway. Now, the 5090 has Nvidia's newer multi multi-frame generation feature, which basically just means it can generate more AI frames than the 4090. Both laptops can use frame gen in the 2x mode, where one frame is generated for each real frame. But with multi-frame gen, the 5090 can also use the 3x mode, where 2 frames are generated per one real frame, or the 4x mode, where 3 frames are generated per one real frame. But even more generated AI frames with multi-frame generation means higher latency and more visual artifacts. And while it can be useful in some scenarios, I don't think that it's enough to pick the 5090 over the 4090, which again, still can use frame generation 2x if you want. So then, is it worth paying more money for an RTX 5090 gaming laptop, or should you save some cash and get a 4090? Prices of both will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and current sales. Right now, in May 2025, the lowest price on an RTX 5090 laptop I've been able to find is $4,000 US. Crazy stuff. There aren't many in stock because the 5090 only recently launched, and either supply is low or somehow people are buying them up at these prices. Or it could be both. Meanwhile, the RTX 4090 has a different problem. Right now, the cheapest one starts for $3,000 US, which is ridiculous. Because up until a few months ago, we regularly had better models than this on the GamingLaptop.deal's website for around $2,400. So these high-end gaming laptops currently have two different problems. On the one hand, 5090s are super expensive and hard to find because they only just came out, and there's not a whole lot of supply. But then on the other hand, it seems like RTX 4090 laptop production has basically stopped, also making them expensive and hard to find. Just for some context, when the 4090 first came out, Lenovo's Legion Pro 7i was about $3,200. Over time, with sales, that dropped down to $2,300 to $2,400. Meanwhile, the Legion Pro 7i with 5090 is coming out at $4,000. Of course, this laptop has other improvements that increase the cost, like the new OLED screen, but in terms of cost for the performance on offer, it's a huge difference. My point is, like the 4090, prices on 5090 laptops will likely decrease over time. But right now, 5090 laptops just offer poor value from a cost per frame perspective. Basically, this is how many FPS you get in games for every dollar you spend. A 4090 on sale offered the best value by far, but even if we consider the 4090 launch price, it's still significantly better value compared to the cheapest 5090 prices at the moment. So who is the 5090 laptop actually for? I think it's only worth considering if you need the extra VRAM, you care about multi-frame generation, or you want better power efficiency or better battery life while gaming. But let's be honest, most of those aren't game changers for most people. The 4090's 16 gigs of VRAM is still plenty for modern games. And while the 5090's 24 gigs might be more future-proof, my current 4K test results show we're not there yet. As for frame gen, the 4090 already supports the 2x mode, which I think is fine if you want frame gen. Going with 3x and 4x with the 5090 doesn't really seem too useful to me, considering both of these already offer very high performance levels. And yeah, power efficiency is nice with the 5090. We all like saving money on electricity, and it's better for the environment, but most people aren't going to pay such a big price premium for that. But if you do play games on battery power, the RTX 5090's better power efficiency really shines there. But again, you're paying a huge premium to get that. And at the end of the day, I suspect a lot of you are probably just going to connect the charger so that you can actually get full performance out of the expensive hardware you're paying for. Bottom line, I don't think the 5090 offers enough extras over the 4090 to justify the higher cost. If I were buying today, I'd go with the 4090. Of course, assuming I could actually find one. They're getting harder to come by. So if you're stuck choosing between paying too much now or waiting, personally, I'd wait for the 5090 laptops to lower in price. Unless you're made of cash. In that case, just get the 5090 and have a good time. If you already own a 4090 laptop, good news. You're not missing much. It's not worth upgrading to the 5090. So just enjoy your 4090. You can find the best gaming laptop prices on our GamingLaptop.deal's website with that link below. And if you are after a 5090 laptop, this is the best one I've reviewed so far. So I'll see you in that one next. Of course, there are plenty more laptops for me to review this year. So if you're new here, get subscribed so you don't miss any of that content.